now on our mobile app or our website www.ugandaairlines.com or call telephone number 0200 406 400 or visit our ticketing offices at Victoria University Towers, Ginger Road, Kampala, and at our Entebbe Airport offices. Fly Uganda Airlines for a memorable flying experience.
Uganda Airlines.
Freddy! Osmosis. Fredola, my boss. CEO Binojo. General of generals. Conqueror of conquerors. The first and the final. The sky above the skies. The thunder before the lightning. The promised land. The terms and conditions. The international king crocodile. The source of the Nile.
Osmosis. I don't have money today.
Just take a polite loan of 200k to stock on my shop.
Why hassle for a loan when you've got MTN Momo? We're sorting it. Use the Momo app or dial *165*5# for all quick loans. Choose from different loan options and get one that works for you. Together, we're unstoppable. MTN Momo is regulated by Bank of Uganda.
Broadcasting from the heart of Kampala, the news on Radio 1.
Brought to you by KCB Mobi Loan. Dial *244#, select option 4 to access our Mobi Loan of up to 5 million shillings. KCB Bank, for people, for better.
The news in brief. I'm Josephina Ndekano. The Speaker of Parliament, Anita Mong, directs party whips to remove MPs on oversight committees that did not attend a recent induction meeting despite Parliament paying a hotel for their attendance. According to the Speaker Among, the induction was meant to train the MPs on how to handle accountability matters in line with the parliamentary oversight role of Parliament. She is, however, disappointed that out of the 90 MPs who were expected to attend from both the Public Accounts Committee and COSASE, only 50% attended. She also indicates some staff of Parliament attached to the two committees did not attend. This, she says, should be addressed by removing the MPs and staff from the committees and have them replaced by those ready to execute their mandate. The Democratic Party wants the government to protect local businessmen from the increasing lack of trade order in the business sector. This follows threats by the Kampala City Traders Association to organize a demonstration opposing fake investors in the country. According to DP, the current state of trade order in the country highly favors foreign investors. The Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities are urging Ugandans to embrace conservation as it provides more value to the country in terms of tourism and biodiversity. The minister in charge of the sector, Tom Butime, says that although the population of animals in Uganda has increased due to conservation efforts, there are potential threats including poaching that is affecting some animal species. In a statement ahead of the World Wildlife Day, due on the 3rd of next month, Minister Buteme says that at the moment Uganda hosts a big percentage of the population of wildlife, and that is valuable today and in future. And elsewhere, a zookeeper at a Nigerian university has been killed by one of the lions he had been looking after for close to a decade. In a statement, the university said Olabode Olawe, who was in charge of the zoo at Obafemi Awolowo University, was attacked as he was feeding the lions. His colleagues were unable to save him as one of the lions had already wounded him. The lion has since been put down. Next is Spectrum with Kenneth Anderson Lukwago.
That was the news on Radio 1.
Brought to you by KCB Mobi Loan. Dial *244#, select option 4 to access our Mobi Loan of up to 5 million shillings. KCB Bank, for people, for better.
The family of Professor Venancio Mvano of Entebbe, Uganda, with deep sorrow announced the death of their beloved head of family, Professor Venancio Mvano, which occurred at Aga Khan Hospital, Nairobi, on the 17th of February. A vigil is to be held at home in Entebbe Town, Plot 2, Research Close, on the 21st of February, starting at 6 p.m. There will be a funeral mass at Mugonga Catholic Parish, Entebbe, on the 21st of February, starting at 3 p.m. And burial will take place at the family home in Karambi A, Rushango Town Council, Ibanda North Constituency, Ibanda District, on the 23rd of February 2024 at 11 a.m. Informed our relatives, friends, and in-laws. May his soul rest in eternal peace.
Radio 1. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you, and thank you very much for making time to join us on this edition of Spectrum, coming to you live on Radio 1 FM 90, which is broadcasting from the Central Building. That's the home of Radio 1 FM 90. And we are also live on our website, which is www.radio1fm90.com. You click on the icon with the word Listen Live when that website opens. Radio 1 is also live on the different radio listening apps. TuneIn, AfroMobile, Your TV channel, Radio Garden, and Stream Africa. You can also get us via DSTV. If you have a DSTV connection, look for audio channel 897. And on Star Times, our audio channel is 97. My name is Kenneth Lukwago Anderson, your host. And today we'll be looking at the right to bail and some of the emerging concerns. Now, earlier today, a team of concerned citizens and lawyers petitioned the Constitutional Court, questioning some conditions put in place by some magistrates and judges for one to be granted bail. Now, the issue of bail is among the key concerns often raised wherever stakeholders are discussing matters access to justice. In the recent past, there was concern about asking for land titles and large sums of money, sometimes in cash. There has also been a debate on restricting grant of bail for some categories of suspects. This has mainly been pushed by our President, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who has even promised to push for an amendment if his views are not accepted by judicial officers. There has also been the debate about access to justice for the indigent, who are said to be the majority and on remand in jails. This is one of the reasons why some human rights activists continue to push for the legal aid bill that remains stuck in Parliament. So this evening, we'll be focusing on access to justice by looking at the right to bail and the conditions that one has to meet to be granted it. I have two guests in studio. Dr. Sylvia Namobiro Mukasa, Executive Director at the Legal Aid Service Providers Network. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Doctor.
Good evening, Kenneth. Thank you for hosting me once again, and good evening to our listeners.
Also in studio, Mr. Amos Kuku, public interest litigant. He's behind the latest petition challenging some conditions of bail. This petition was filed earlier today, like I've already indicated, in the Constitutional Court. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, Kenneth, and our dear listeners. Thanks very much for Radio 1 for hosting me to discuss this pertinent matter that regards bail.
And very quickly, we'll begin with you, Amos. You went to the Constitutional Court today. Briefly, let's begin by hearing what are the issues that are taking you to this level?
Yes, thanks very much, Kenneth, for that question. Why did we go to court today? By way of a preamble, for the whole of last year, 2023, I spent it traversing different prison facilities in Uganda, purposely looking at the inmates as far as the right to access to bail is concerned. What came up as an issue was that many of them were on remand, but had been applied for bail and had been granted the same, but with the simple condition that they had to pay particular amounts of money. So they were still on remand for only a simple reason that they were unable to pay, and they, as such, they spent long periods of time on remand, which when we sat down and analyzed it under the evolution of judicial processes and access to justice, we realized that it was contrary to different provisions of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. That's why we petitioned the court to ensure that the same is declared null and void. You find that when you analyze this right to bail, is the right to apply for bail,
and its underpinning factors. Many times when an accused person goes to court and apply for bail, they have to prove different conditions. One of such conditions is that they have permanent place of abode. They will not prejudice the security of the complainant or the investigation process. They are not a danger to the public, or even that they will not abscond in case they are allowed to attend to the trial at the same time enjoying their liberty. But many times, when court grants them bail, is after granting them bail that it prescribes the conditions that they have to abide with. And of our concern is the cash bail. At that moment, this person has not been given an opportunity to give evidence as to whether they have capacity to pay. Court is not sure as to whether this person has capacity to pay. But it prescribes an amount of money that for you to be released, you will pay such and such an amount of money. And as such, if the same is not paid, he is taken back on remand until when the same is paid, or they give such a person a remedy that they have to apply for a revision such that such a term, as far as cash is concerned, is removed or reduced. But still, it's not predetermined that a court of law will reduce this amount. A good example in 2022, a judicial officer granted that on exorbitant bit of it. But the final ruling was that the same had been reduced from 30 to 3 million. But still, even he wasn't contented, because 3 million still is huge. Why? Because let alone after 1 year or 2 years, the case was actually dismissed for want of prosecution. As such, many litigants or many accused persons are left on remand for a simple reason that they have failed to pay, which manifests a concept of commercialization of human rights, because you have to pay to enjoy this right. What happens if you don't money? Apply for revision. The revisional applications themselves are expensive in private practice. Even some of the accused persons do not know these procedures. A simple question is, if a judicial officer on a revision application is expected to remove this condition, why in the first place prescribed the condition to prejudice someone's rights? 2, it's also derogatory and inhuman to compel someone to appear before a court of law and plead their poverty, that please sympathize with me. I'm poor, I'm unable to pay. Why are you giving people such ill treatment, yet you can do away with this thing? 3, there is no guarantee that when a person pays cash bail is not a flight risk. Many high-profile cases that I won't mention their names in Uganda have paid cash bail, but at the same time they abscond. Therefore, the best alternative is the institution of sureties. Once you produce credible sureties, even under the current practice, they are mandated to sign a bond that in case a person violates the terms and conditions that have been set for bail, these sureties shall pay a particular sum of money. That sum of money can be justified on a simple reason that by the time court asks the sureties to pay this money, the terms of bail have already been violated. There is a justification. But why should a beneficiary of bail pay money? Abscond, he is presumed innocent, he has this right, but you're telling him pay this money. So it's discriminatory, contrary to Article 21, because those who have means and resources is not a concern. But the poor people, those who do not have, whenever they are granted bail with cash condition, is suffering. They sell their land, they sell their property, they sell each and everything to ensure that they get themselves out of the prison cells.
All right. We'll be getting back to you to dig more on some of the issues that you've put across. But let's hear from Dr. Sylvia Namobiru Mukasa. The reason you're here, because you're one of the crusaders when it comes to issues of access to justice. Let's look at the issue of bail as one of the issues you have often reflected on. How big is it a challenge when it comes to access to justice?
Okay. Thank you so much, Kenneth. And I want to congratulate my brother, Pupu Amos, for taking a bold step to challenge one of the conditions that is always provided by court before some of the suspects are released on bail. Indeed, this comes as a result of protection of liberty, where everyone is charged with a criminal offense is presumed innocent until proved guilty. However, Article 23, that is, I think, sub-Article 5, and another subsection, goes ahead to say everyone who is charged with a criminal offense shall be entitled to apply for bail on conditions reasonable, assumed to be reasonable. So the idea of the Constitution was to ensure that someone is presumed innocent and that when they appear before the court, they are allowed to enjoy their procedural rights, and it was to be safeguarded by the grant of bail. Unfortunately, over time, you know, as we grow in jurisprudence and different judicial officers coming on board, different temperaments, different consideration, you find that sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where there is a disadvantaged group, especially when they appear to process their right to bail in order to access justice. So you realize that it's true, as my brother said, the majority of the prisoners and suspects are put in the category of vulnerable and poor. Many of them are not represented by lawyers. They traverse the justice system on their own. And so when they come, some of the judicial officers think that the only condition to put across is cash bail, and that is the only assurance that will bring them back. Of course, they are right within the Constitution, because as I have mentioned, on such reasonable terms, they are right. But the question is, are they reasonable based on the circumstances, so that they don't fall into they don't fall into that category or that situation which my brother is describing as becoming discriminatory and commercialization of justice. It is expected that a judicial officer, when they are processing bail or when they are listening to bail after it has been, the suspect has applied through personally or through the lawyer, they are supposed to assess all conditions surrounding this suspect. And cash bail was, of course, one of the security that was considered, that when someone puts in money, cash, they are likely to come back to court and answer their charges. It's a safeguard. But also the same provision of the law, like now that is Section 78 of the Magistrates Court Act, which they are challenging, provides also for bond. So it gives two options. Unfortunately, judicial officers tend to lean more on the cash instead of also seeing this aspect of bond and also applying it depending on the circumstances of this person that has come. So in a way, majority, because the cash condition is given much more prominence in all bail applications, in a way it disadvantages this vulnerable and poor, and causing a cause of action of a rights violation for majority, because majority cannot afford, and therefore the reason why my brother and his colleagues are saying no. I think time has come to look at these provisions of this Constitution as well as the law, whether they are still relevant or they are being abused and require review or reinterpretation to ensure that everyone is able to access justice.
Well, you raise a very important issue there. Why cash? Why do you think they are interested more in cash if there are other provisions? Is it because they think the cash will hold somebody? But Amos told us that people can still run away even when they have deposited huge sums of money. So where does, maybe we need to understand, when they tell you to pay cash, where does that money go?
You see now, cash is a practice because the law has given you two options. It can either be bond, because like the sureties are bonded. That when the other person jumps bail, then the sureties are liable to either be imprisoned themselves or they are made to pay that bond.
We had the Kakwenza incident.
So the cash, why cash? It is practice and usages. Judicial jurisprudence and what we call case law, practice over a period of time. That they maybe think that this money that you pay will make you know that I need to go back. Reasons being, this money, when it's paid, it's not money for government. It is neither government for money for court. Even when you are convicted, even when you are acquitted, you are expected to go back and pick that money. Although majority of the people don't know. Now, when it becomes a practice, we get what we call either insensitive administration of this justice. By depending on the judicial officer presiding over the matter. They think that the more the money, the more the person will come back. And they forget the other surrounding circumstances of this suspect. because we have said they are presumed to be innocent until proved guilty. Probably they've brought what we call substantive sureties. Probably they have fixed places of abode. And then you look at the person, probably he's representing himself and even has no lawyer. And here you are saying pay 1 million cash. If I did not even manage to get a lawyer to give them that 1 million to come and represent me, it means I cannot afford. You putting a cash bail of 1 million is tantamount to saying I have denied you bail. So what that means is that we need to have judicial officers that are alive to the realities. The realities of the people, the realities of the current economic constraints, and are able to assess. That's why there is an element of discretion. Reasonable conditions.
All right.
So within that, you, the one who is presiding over, you need to see, is this cash bail I'm giving the reasonable, or will this person likely to afford? Should I give cash bail if there are other satisfactory conditions fulfilled? Or I can try bond. If many people you are granting bail are failing to pay, and you are seated in this magistrate's court, and you realize that you've released about 10 in a week, and only 2 have managed to pay, then it should be able to come to your mind to say, oh, no, I think this cash condition is not applicable in the circumstances and I need to apply others.
You wanted to weigh in on the issue of cash bail, Mr. Amos. But also I heard in the news, one of the issues you were raising is about even accountability for this money. You say people struggle to actually get it back when they are either convicted or when the cases against them are dismissed.
Yes. Kenneth, when you interrogate the issue of cash bail as a whole, it has a lot of injustices. A good example is a person who qualifies for mandatory bail, that is having been on remand for 180 days or 60 days in cases that are triable by a magistrate court. And for those 4 high court have not been committed and magistrate court, the trial hasn't proceeded, they qualify for mandatory bail. And the only person to blame here is the prosecution's office for having failed to adduce evidence for the person to be committed to high court or for the trial to commence in the magistrate court. But many times when such people also applies for bail, they are granted bail with some kind of prescription for cash. That bail is granted, yes, you qualify for mandatory bail, but pay this amount of money for it to be released. A simple question is, a person who has been in jail for over a year, where do you expect them to have earned money from? Are prisoners being paid in prison facilities? You're prescribing money, or you're reducing this poor to a mere beggars that please, community members, help me to raise this money. However, the pertinent issue, where does this money go? I'd like to quote the reports in the Daily Monitor of 3rd November 2021, when they reported that cash bail, when they reported that the judiciary is stuck with over 26 billion bail cash, and they were pleading with those who were the bona fide owners of this money to go and claim the same. Unfortunately, up to the present day, the judiciary hasn't given us a report how many people have written to them to claim this money. The jurisprudential underpinning that surrounds the criminal justice system and its evolution, when a person gets out of the prison cells, they are relieved from a very big burden. That even
they
if
run away,
they are entitled to something.
They
do not want to appear
in court.
Again before court. And also it has some kind of human rights violations that surrounds it. Because when you interrogate Article 26 of the Constitution, right to property, someone's property was taken, he's entitled to it, but they do not claim it. So money is there. Even the judiciary itself is struggling with it. I would also draw your attention to still Daily Monitor of 6th July 2022, when they reported that lawyers shunned judiciary over 30 million basic bail money. This thing has been here for such a long period of time. Accountability, sometimes you may not blame the judiciary itself, because this is a custom that has been backseated in the Uganda criminal justice system for such a long period of time. You know, when you get used to something, much as it's abnormal, it becomes normal. It's the order of doing things. They don't mind whether money is there. Actually, they just say we are stuck with this money, but they still continue asking for beneficiaries of bail grants to pay money. And the rigorous process, Kenneth, when you're used to something, it's normal to only you, not the entire public. They may say, you just write to us. But remember, even under the procedures, they pay this money to bank accounts. You can't write to them and you go claim physical cash. So how many Ugandans do have bank accounts? How many Ugandans do have the procedure? Take case if you're an indigent person or a person in the criminal justice system is required to pay 1 million. If they come to my law firm as a lawyer to help them claim that money, I'll demand for 1 million to claim 1 million. Is it justifiable? But is it reasonable?
Let's look at the other key aspect, and Dr. Sylvia actually raised it, the discretion of the court to actually determine how to grant bail based on the gravity of the matter they are actually handling. Why don't we leave this to judges? Well, they can even say cash, maybe 50 million, because maybe they are looking at somebody who is likely to escape, a terrorist or something like that.
Kenneth, the discretionary powers. In legal practice, we would pose a question as to whether discretionary powers of court might be used arbitrarily. The petition is saying that a cash bail contravenes different provisions of the Constitution. Can a court of law use discretionary powers to violate the Constitution itself over which is providing before a court of justice? Yes, we have the discretionary powers under Article 23, Clause 6 of the Constitution, that court has discretion to grant bail on such terms as it seems reasonable. The issue is discretion in bail applications and grants should be used judiciously. Would it be doing justice to ask a person to pay money without you having ascertained how much that they can afford to pay? Or even after ascertaining, what is the instance of money? Does it protect a person? Does it ensure that they will return to court? You have the institution of sureties. You have other conditions that have been satisfied. I'll draw an example. I wouldn't want to mention names here, but because this is public record, we had the case of Uganda versus Matthew Chilabo in Mukono. That case of murder, it has been there since 2015. They granted him cash bail. Sureties were bonded, if I remember, around 50 million, and they were like 3 or 4. When he absconded, they paid around 150 million to 200 million. Much as he was granted cash bail, it did not ensure that he returns to court to attend his trial, not until of recent when he was arrested in Kenya. So that means that cash bail is not serving a legitimate purpose, but instead is just prejudicing the majority public, those who find themselves in the confines of the criminal justice system.
All right. Let's shift a little bit our gears. And Dr. Sylvia Nambiru, there is also the other debate about who qualifies for bail and who shouldn't. We have had this debate going on, and even President Yoweri Museveni weighed in and said he was tired of courts granting bail to people just the way they feel like. And his argument is it's contributing to the unending cycle of crime, especially violent crime. What's your take in that area?
Guards now begin to change in practice. But ideally, if the judicial officers were applying that reasonable conditions, it wouldn't cause for this kind of intervention. But now to take you who qualifies to bail, everyone charged with a criminal offense, according to Article 23, whether capital or minor, is entitled to bail. And it is anchored, or the bedrock of that presumption of, it is a presumption of innocence. So that right is safeguarded because, it is the prosecution or the police investigating saying you committed a crime. But you have not been placed before the courts of law to find you guilty or of that crime. You are most likely to be innocent. So when this safeguard procedural right is put in place, it is safeguarding the likely repercussions of you, for example, being innocent and staying on remand for over a period of, say, 5 years, and then later on the courts pronounce you innocent. So everyone charged with a criminal offense, for as long as they have satisfied those conditions that the court deems fit, is entitled to bail. Now, His Excellency, at some point in time, wanted to move that the law be amended. And I think it received tremendous resistance, even with the Chief Justice himself. So how was it settled? I think how it was settled currently was to put in place what we call practice direction on bail condition, on how to grant bail and the condition to satisfy, and some kind of guidance on how to apply the discretionary powers. But see, those practice directions are still having issues. And I'm sure my brother, who is now petitioning the court, will be able to bring out some of the issues even concerning those practice directions. Because right now, if you are charged with a capital offense, to apply for bail, I think the whole file has to be moved from the Chief Magistrate's Court, and it comes all the way to the High Court. So the procedure is so cumbersome. Again, in one way or another, you are given, but in the other way, it is taken away. So we think that this should not be a matter of the president's wish. It should be a matter of safeguards.
All right.
Yes.
Well, Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. We need to go for a break now. When we return, Amos Kuku will also weigh in on this issue of who qualifies for bail and the proposal being made. But there's also the other aspect of access to justice for the indigent. Where is the legal aid bill that we have been talking about for many years?
I'm going to instruct my brother Amos to bring a public interest case.
Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. We'll continue after this break.
Radio 1 FM 90.
Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. My name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host. Our topic of discussion today is the right to bail and the emerging concerns. My guest, Dr. Sylvia Nambiru Mukasa, Executive Director at the Legal Aid Services Providers Network. Also in studio, Mr. Amos Kuku, public interest litigant. He is behind the latest petition challenging the condition of cash bail. He filed earlier today, together with other concerned Ugandans, a petition before the Constitutional Court. Mr. Amos, let's hear from you on this issue of who qualifies for bail and the desire by the president that the judiciary should begin limiting their decisions when they are looking at the different types of cases that are before them.
Yes, Kenneth, about this matter, who qualifies to be granted bail, we have to interrogate the concept of social justice and evolution of justice processes in the criminal justice system. Why would someone inquire as to whether some accused persons, those who are accused for having committed capital offenses, do not qualify for bail? I would think that, or I would weigh in on that I think we shouldn't take that slippery path. Simply because if we decided to take that path, the whole essence of bail would be watered down, because every person is presumed to be innocent until when evidence is adduced and that person is proved guilty under Article 28, Clause 3A. Even those who are charged with capital offenses, they are presumed to be innocent, no matter what would be the whims and wishes of the powers that be, that maybe ABCD wouldn't be granted bail. If I may weigh in on to the presidential concerns, the president's concerns about persons accused of capital offenses, of recent we've just seen the very same office pardoning people and the presidential pardon mercy
prerogative
of mercy. So how a president can pardon people, but you say that the general populace who find themselves being charged of such offenses shouldn't be granted bail? Why? Two, the issue of discretionary nature of bail applications, that whenever a person applies for bail, court has discretion to grant or not to grant. The reason as to why we have that discretion, that is a court of law that weigh in onto the evidence on court record. What are the chances that this person is guilty? What are the chances that the charges themselves are frivolous, are fictitious? Yes, even on capital offenses, because the moment I allege against you that you murdered someone and I can at least have some evidence that someone died somewhere, the law you would be an accused person. Not until when evidence is adduced, either to prove that you're guilty or not, is when at least you would start serving a particular penalty. So why would the legal process deny someone of the right to bail simply because the charges are taken to be grave. 2, capital offences and bail applications in magistrate courts. Normally, the law is that when someone is being charged of a criminal offence, in the magistrate court, it's only committal proceedings until when they commit you to the High Court. So if such a person is to apply for bail, they would have to take the whole file to the High Court. Is High Court to grant bail for such a person to be released before the person is committed to the High Court? It's a little bit problematic, but public interest litigants have tried to challenge that. That was the case of FHRI, Foundation for Human Rights Initiative versus Attorney General. Unfortunately, court disagreed with the petitions because we are saying in that petition that if a person is charged in if a person is produced in the magistrate court over a capital offence, much as is for committal purposes, court must have powers to entertain their bail application. But court disagreed with them, reasoning that a magistrate court doesn't have jurisdiction over such offences, so they should first be committed to the High Court, or such applications must be entertained by the High Court. The beauty of that judgment is, nowadays, when a person is committed, bail that was granted prior doesn't lapse, because the magistrate court wouldn't have powers to cancel a bail that is granted by the High Court. But we have some jurisprudential gaps in there, and now, because court pronounced it off, the remedy we are having is advocacy, lobbying to ensure that maybe policymakers, legislators look into that, because many times people spend a lot of time in magistrate courts, and applications before High Court, one, they must be written, and they're expensive in nature. An accused person would require services of a lawyer, and many times they can't afford that, and rarely do lawyers on state briefs do apply for bail in the High Court, or even sometimes they do not pay attention to that, and these people remain into the criminal justice system to the extent of almost forgetting them in there.
All right. Very quickly, let's shift now gears and look at the issue of legal aid bill. Very important there to address some of these issues that we're looking at. We are talking about people failing to raise money for cash bail. And you, Dr. Sylvia, and other members of the Legal Aid Service Providers Network have been campaigning for a legal aid policy in this country. Where are we now on that issue?
Yeah, we have been doing a lot of lobbying and invested a lot of resources to have the legal aid law passed by government or by the parliament. And we somehow made some strides. But although we hit some snag, I want our listeners to know that 80% of Ugandans cannot afford. It is researched and proved that they cannot afford services of a private practitioner. 5% of Ugandans go to formal courts. The research is of 2020 by here, and only 1% of those litigants are represented by lawyers. What does that mean? And leave the majority of Ugandans. They are left to the whims and mercies of the judicial officers to decide their cases fairly and equitably. And therefore, we cannot talk about access to justice, leaving out the lawyers as a component of or a critical actor in ensuring that Ugandans that go to courts of law access affordable and good or efficient justice. So where are we? The 10th Parliament, yes, had the first reading of the legal aid bill, which we call 2020, and it was not saved by the 10th Parliament. And the Speaker then, the late Olanya, ruled the omnibus ruling that every legislation that had not been saved should be afresh brought back to Parliament. So the 11th Parliament, still under Greater North Parliamentary Forum and led by Honorable Argon Silas, brought back the law, and it received a certificate of financial implication. And so it was given its first reading and referred to the Legal and Parliamentary Committee for scrutiny. And the Legal and Parliamentary Committee scrutinized the law. We appeared as key stakeholders. We gave our opinion. We gave our justification and really showed the government that this law is long overdue since the policy has been at cabinet since 2012. And at some point, the committee had believed us. And they had brought back this law for the second reading. It was on order paper. I think that was last year. I don't remember the month. To our disadvantage, the Attorney General came up with an objection. and said this law cannot proceed, and that there were irregularities in how the certificate of financial implication was obtained, and that even the requirement of government to fund legal aid law or the legal aid scheme is very exorbitant and the government cannot afford. So the committee was asked to go back and harmonize with the Attorney General. And the Attorney General came, gave his justification before the committee again, and the mover also did. Up to now. No. After then, again, the committee came back to Parliament with a recommendation to shelve off the law. However, they faced overwhelming resistance from the floor of Parliament, where all members of Parliament were saying, but we cannot spend all this time, and you come back here and you tell us to shelve a law that is very important and critical to all majority of Ugandans. I remember, may her soul rest in eternal peace, Cecily Ogwal mentioned and said, government is budgeting, or budgets are financed by development partners. So why not also consider this law to be part of those that can be financed? May her soul rest in eternal peace. So the Speaker, Deputy, advised the committee to go back and harmonize the clauses where the Attorney General was objecting, to harmonize with the mover. And up to today, they have not returned. But for us, what we have done as what we call vigilancy, we went back and did a cost-benefit analysis, the updated version. And we provided for two options. If the government of Uganda was to continue financing the legal aid law with the donors, with the status quo, we have Law Development Center, we have justice centers, we have the non-state actors. How much would it cost? And it came to around 33 billion. 33 billion. And then if the government of Uganda was to fully take on legal aid and establish a functional legal aid scheme, it would cost them around 61 billion. So we have written back to the Parliament, the Speaker, to the committee, to the Attorney General, and the Minister of Justice. Of recent, the Minister of Justice met us informally and said they have agreed internally to harmonize the position, but they need to meet us. So
what's the cost-benefit analysis? Because we need to put money where
the cost-benefit is that we are not looking at only accessing fair justice. Yes? That is core. That it is a constitutional right for anyone who is going to courts of law, who has a complaint and dispute, to have fair and speedy hearing. And you need lawyers, constitutionally given. However, there are other social and economic benefits that come along, including political, rule of law, security of persons, security of people, human rights protection, fulfilling inclusivity and satisfying the Sustainable Goal 16, which is a requirement. Employment of young lawyers that want to carry their career as legal social justice advocates. You know, public interest matters such as this one, which affects majority. If legal aid is there, those are the kind of cases that are funded, and a lot of other benefits.
All right.
Yes.
Amos, your take on this issue of legal aid as a lawyer, as somebody who is involved in public litigation. Well, do you think it would help to address some of the issues that are even being raised by your petition?
Yes, Kenneth. To share with you about personal experiences in the criminal justice system, because I've had a benefit of representing so many indigent persons in this country, those who can't afford to pay lawyers. And I've seen the circus that always goes on in court. One, we are still operating the common law tradition in our litigation, where the language of court is English. A person is produced in court. A judicial officer requires that person to cross-examine the witnesses, the other side for the prosecution. A judicial officer is a legal practitioner, much as is a judicial officer, paid by the state. The prosecutor is paid by the state. Two sophisticated offices prosecuting a person who is unrepresented, talking foreign language, talking English, telling this person to follow the strict rules of procedure, which many times indeed they can't. And many times you witness injustices being committed for a simple reason that this person is not represented. I commend public law practitioners for having championed this bill and what they have done. But here the question is, the will. Is it true that the government is facing budgetary implications? I really doubt that. How come they can afford to pay a judicial officer and a prosecutor to ensure that this person is tried to the logical conclusion? Why shouldn't you at least hire a lawyer for this person to ensure that justice is done? Because whereas others need the law, for the poor, they need justice. The law cannot serve all their needs. They need justice, and justice can only be done if these people are represented. So it's simply a lack of will on the side of the state. Otherwise, we would have had this bill already done. It's long overdue.
All right, we have comments coming in from the listeners via the WhatsApp line 0703-090-090. I'll read out some of these comments and you will respond to them. We have a comment coming in from Henry. Instead of having sureties bear the burden of bail for a prisoner, bail should be put on the investigative officer's head, since they haven't done investigations fully for the case to proceed for trial. Now, that is another contribution there. He thinks because investigators should bear the burden. Then another comment from Mohaire Peter, who is listening in from Kibuli, says, not everybody or suspect in court needs a lawyer. It is by choice. E.g., sometime back, Kanovesige refused a lawyer and represented himself, yet he can afford. That's a comment there. So he seems to suggest that we are probably trying to push something that
people don't want.
People don't want. All right.
Speaking for himself.
We will hear from you. We have a comment coming from Okello Patrick Bonyo from Busega. Thanks for the show. The way I see justice in Uganda, it favors those who have money. Then he says, it favors those who have money. A poor person has a thin layer to win a case. Hiring a lawyer is another challenge of itself because of its cost implications. If I pay bail application and the court finds me innocent, can I collect back my money? That's a question there from Bonyo Patrick in Busega. Kanene Johnson from Sironko says, I think we need legal aid bill completed. I visited Maluku Mbale prison where I interacted with a prisoner who is on remand for 5 years up to now. And when I asked him, he was like, he said he has no help and the judge has never called his file. And this is what he advises the new inmates on remand to accept the offense put on them in order to be charged and be sure of their end date, since he doesn't know if he will ever leave prison. We have another comment from Iga Samuel, listening in from Namulondo Zone in Bweyogerere. Say, thanks for the show. Granting bail, it's a cost responsibility, but the problem in Uganda is citizens have lost trust in the tribunals of law because of them being corrupt and always favoring those with money. Another thing, after suspect being granted a cash bail and all of the sudden proven innocent, of course, don't expect that person to go back claiming for his or her money. Sincerely speaking, those places are feared. Well, those are some of the comments that are coming in, and I'll begin with you, Dr. Sylvia Namubiru, for your responses.
Thank you so much, our listeners, for those useful comments. Sureties should be a burden of investigators. This investigator is the one that is bringing this suspect before courts of law. He can't do a double work. What the investigator wants is this person to be put behind bars. So the alternative is to find other sureties that can show cause and show court that they are willing to bring back the person. Not everybody needs a lawyer. True, when someone is enlightened, and they know what they're supposed to do, and they know their rights, and they can defend them, they can proceed and represent themselves. But like I've said, majority of Ugandans, they don't know the law. They've told you about the sophistication of the legal practice and complexities. Traversing the justice system is so daunting, so intimidative. Yeah, it is. People get intimidated. That's why you hear when they get out, they don't want to come back. It's the lawyer to give you assurance and tell you all will be well, and I'm going to do my best to defend your case. So majority of Ugandans need the law. The law favors those who have money. True, yes. Because like we've said, affordability of access to justice comes with a cost. And therefore, as you've heard counsel talk about the fact that the prosecutor knows the law, the court, the judicial officer is also a lawyer. Now, if you don't have another third person who is a lawyer defending your rights, it means the law will not favor you because you will miss out on some steps, you will miss out on some ingredients of your matter, some defense. If it is a civil matter, you will miss out and you will definitely lose the law. And that's why they say the poor cannot afford. And that's why we are talking about the alternative, putting in place a public defense office that can defend those who cannot come. There is someone who said, I pay, but I can't correct. Of course, that
if I pay...
Timidness. If the court is so intimidating, and the procedure, the adversarialness, the procedures and all that, knocking and the banging of the doors and etc., all that creates an environment that if someone is not really well or conversant with the situation, they would not want to come back. There is someone is it Moroto? Who has stayed there?
Helene Johnson.
Yes, and then said he
went to Mbale prison.
And they said, okay, accept the case. That is the plea bargain. And we think that there's a lot of injustice in plea bargaining because people who have overstayed on remand oftentimes accept the offense when they are innocent, but because they want to get out. And as a result, they put a criminal record on their backs. Then citizens have lost trust because of corruption, correctly so. Even the bail, we are talking about the cash bail. Behind curtains, sometimes it's even negotiated. And on record, you report some money that is not actually paid. And as a result, there's no trust. But we are doing our best here to defend the rights of those vulnerable and marginalized through the advocacy for the legal aid law, to make sure that everyone comes on the table of justice with equality. And then we are also, as you've heard, those who cannot afford bail, cash, he's here and he's standing in the gap with the colleagues.
All right. We have another comment coming here. Kenneth, what do your visitors say of corruption of judges? Today I witnessed a corrupt judge at High Court who ignored scientific evidence and relied on witnesses to render a judgment of 44 years in a criminal case between a father and a son over murder of a stepbrother. We have evidence from hospital and postmortem that exonerates the accused. But the father of the convicted son kept calling people today to come and see what a man does. That's a comment from one of the listeners. Let's get your comment, your responses, Amos, as we come towards the end of this show.
Let him start with that last one, so that he doesn't lose.
Corruption of judicial officers. Corruption is actually a pandemic in Uganda. It's a very big problem that we are struggling with. It's not only unique to judicial officers, and unfortunately many times because the legal processes we are operating under requires evidence. Sometimes evidence is scanty. Sometimes even the will itself to fight corruption in the country is lacking. It's a very big problem that we are grappling with, which hasn't gotten a solution currently. I can't provide any hope to the listeners that such will be done to solve this, but it's very big. Almost every office is corrupt in Uganda. So that one actually, I can't weigh into it because we are just trying to do whatever that we can to ensure that this problem reduces. I beg to submit on that, and I give my comments onto the...
Please proceed on the other comments.
Yes, Henry suggested that bail should be put onto investigators, investigative officers. But you check that I would like to presume that he was referring to mandatory bail. And that's exactly what I've just said, is that it's akin to payment for the incompetence of the prosecution office that delayed to bring this evidence. So completely I'm in agreement with him. Then Mohawe Peter, not everybody needs a lawyer. It's by choice. My kind advice as a legal practitioner is a non-lawyer may never manage to circumvent legal technicalities into judicial processes. Yes, you may know the truth, but you need the lawyer to guide you on some aspects. Okello, justice favors those with money. I am in agreement. That's why we are saying cash bail is in contravention of Article 21, because it's discriminatory as against the poor compared to those with the resources to pay. Then a person who went to Maluku and found that a prisoner who had spent 5 years without their file being called, and the injustices that surrounds pre-bargain and the laws that we are having. Many times as a legal practitioner representing indigent persons, those who can't afford to pay a lawyer, I find my clients at court being advised, I don't know by which officers, that please enter a plea of guilty. The judicial officer shall give you community services, to a penalty of community service. And many of them, when they plead guilty, they are sent into a custodial sentence. I always advise them not to. Of recent, I represented people in Makindye had been advised to plead guilty. Surprisingly, I came back home with them. Their case gotten dismissed. So sometimes those rules are misapplied. Then the last person was Samuel. Samuel, actually, I'm in agreement with him. Court environment is always scary. People who are not used to it always fear to go there. That's why actually many of them do not go back to claim this money. Yes, money is claimed, but I earlier on say that the process is cumbersome, rigorous. For example, if you're to claim something like 200,000, as a lawyer, I would ask for something like 1 million. To claim 200, would you still go ahead and claim that? To the requirement of bank accounts, how many Ugandans do have bank accounts? That's why the judiciary is stuck with over 26 billion on that account that people do not go back to claim this money.
All right, I must thank you so much, my dear guests, Dr. Sylvia Nambiru Mukasa, Executive Director at the Legal Aid Service Providers Network, Mr. Amos Kuku, Public Interest Litigant behind the latest petition challenging cash bail. Thank you so much for making time to be with us this evening.
Thank you so much for giving us the platform to discuss this important matter. We call upon the public to go and collect their money.
They should go and collect their money from the courts.
Yes, let them go.
And to you, the listeners, thank you very much for always contributing to this discussion. Like I always say, your contributions help us to shape the discussion here in studio. I've been your host, Kenneth Lukwago Anderson. Up next, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with BB Jr.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.